What did my mother-in-law whisper into my daughter's ears that kept her away from her own mother for years? I silently watched my daughter slip away from me, never knowing that the truth had been hidden inside an old video message. The moment she watched it, she realized that the person she had hated for so long was actually the one who had loved her the most. Through tears, she set out immediately to find me and ask for my forgiveness. My daughter did not begin pulling away from me in a single day. The distance grew slowly, like the light quietly fading on a winter evening, and by the time a person realizes that darkness has spread, much has already changed between the doors, the rooms, and the faces. My mother-in-law never told my daughter, "You should hate your mother." She was not that foolish. She simply retold certain events in her own way, assigned meanings to a few silences, and gave the name of indifference to every difficult choice I had been forced to make. She told my daughter that when she was little and had stayed awake all night with a fever, I still went to work the next morning, but she never explained that the same job paid her medical bills. She reminded her that I had missed one of her school music programs, but she left out the fact that her father had suddenly walked out that day, and I had spent hours moving between the bank, a lawyer's office, and the insurance company, trying to determine whether we would still have a home the following month. In every memory she showed my absence, never the reason for it. From the outside, my marriage looked like a proper American life. A tidy suburban home, 2 cars in the driveway, an extra freezer in the garage, a refrigerator covered with children's pictures, and mail scattered across the kitchen counter about our 401k mortgage refinancing and retirement plans. We talked about the future as though it belonged to us, but the truth was that we had only become skilled at hiding reality from each other. At Thanksgiving dinner, we all performed our roles. My mother-in-law smiled as she carved the turkey, my husband poured the wine, my daughter laughed with her cousins, and I sat at the far end of the table passing plates. No one knew that 2 hours before dinner, my husband had told me he was staying in the house only because of the children. Or perhaps everyone knew and had simply agreed to remain silent. Family secrets are not always hidden. Sometimes they are merely left unnamed. After my husband left, my mother-in-law made herself my daughter's refuge. My daughter was 14 then, an age when children often want certainty more than truth, and her grandmother gave her a version of certainty in which her father was innocent, I was cold, and the collapse of our family was entirely my fault. My daughter stopped asking questions and began delivering judgments. First, she refused to join me on our Sunday trips to Costco, a small tradition we had kept for years. Then she spent less time at the dinner table. After she left for college, her phone calls became shorter, until eventually all that remained were formal messages on birthdays and Christmas. I tried to stop her from leaving emotionally, but I never defended myself. That may have been my greatest mistake. I believed children eventually understood, that time naturally cleared away confusion, but time reveals only what has been preserved. A lie repeated often enough becomes a memory, while a truth kept silent begins to look like doubt. At PTA meetings, I continued playing the perfect mother. I brought cookies, organized fundraiser lists, wrote thank you cards to teachers, and then returned home and stood for a few moments outside my daughter's closed bedroom door. I knew she was inside talking to her grandmother on the phone, and I knew that after every conversation she moved a little farther away from me. I never tried to take the phone from her. I never created a scene or threw my mother-in-law out of the house. My revenge was patience, because I understood that noise gives a lie more power, while quiet evidence can destroy it. After my husband died, some of his old belongings came to me because my name was still attached to several boxes in the legal records. They contained tax files, insurance documents, old photographs, and a small digital camcorder we had bought when our daughter was 5. I left it untouched for months. Then one cold morning I sat down with a cup of coffee and began watching the recordings. Most of the videos were ordinary. Birthdays, soccer games, Christmas mornings. But one recording had been made the night before our separation. In the video, my husband sat alone in his study with the camera resting on the desk. His face looked like the face of a man who had finally stopped lying to himself. He admitted that he had been involved with another woman for several years, that he had taken money from our savings account, and that when I demanded answers he chose to leave the family. Then he said his mother had known everything. She wanted our daughter to believe the marriage had ended because of me, because she could not bear the thought of her son losing his daughter's respect. I did not send the video to my daughter immediately. I watched it several times, made a copy, spoke with a lawyer, and organized the financial records. I said nothing to my mother-in-law. For the first time in years, I had both the truth and the luxury of time, and I did not intend to waste either by acting too quickly. When my mother-in-law said at a family gathering that some women sacrificed their homes for their careers, I simply looked at her, placed my glass on the table and went home. The following day I wrote my daughter a short email. I did not ask her to remember my love. I did not list everything I had sacrificed, and I did not tell her how deeply she had hurt me. I wrote only that she was old enough now to hear her father speak in his own words, and I attached the video. He watched it that night. I know because she called me at 4:17 in the morning. When I answered, there was silence for several seconds. Then she said my name as though she had suddenly remembered the way back to a place she had forgotten years ago. He was crying, but I was not. She told me she had spent her entire life believing I had abandoned her, and now she understood that I had been the only person who had remained in place through everything. That same morning she went to the airport, took the first available flight, and arrived in my city before evening. When I opened the door, she was no longer the child who had walked away from me, and I was no longer the mother standing outside a closed room, waiting for her to change. She embraced me, apologized, and spoke for a long time. I forgave her, but I did not pretend that nothing had happened. Love does not erase the truth. It makes the truth possible to carry. My mother-in-law called several times afterward. She offered explanations and spoke of age, fear, and a mother's love for her son. I did not argue with her. I mailed an envelope to her home containing a copy of the video, the financial records, and a short note saying that from now on, the story would not be told in her voice alone. That was my revenge. There was no shouting, no public accusation, and no humiliation in front of the family. I simply delivered the truth to the right place at the right time. Today my daughter is back in my life, but we are not rebuilding our old relationship. We are creating a new one where questions are asked, silence is not assigned a convenient meaning, and love is not considered too fragile to survive evidence. Sometimes we still go to Costco on Sundays, but it is no longer a tradition we are trying to recover. It is simply time spent together. I have reorganized my life, rebuilt my retirement plans, and created a home where no one performs for the sake of appearances. I finally learned that truth does not always win quickly, but when it finally arrives, it does not need to knock. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of someone you love, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful, emotional stories. Your support helps us keep sharing meaningful content. Thank you so much for watching, and we truly appreciate every one of you for being here.